Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Lisa Jans and I'm also known as Job Coach Germany. And as you can see, I'm not here on my own today. I have a very special guest. It's Kate Griffin, or also known as Kathleen Griffin from Griffin International Consulting. She is an international, now I need to remember, it's an intercultural, not international, intercultural and communication trainer and coach. And she is based in Germany, as I remember correctly. And she's not just working with people from abroad, but with everybody that is interested in and working with different cultures, right? So, Kate, my first question is, what's your story and why you came to Germany?
So don't feel bad about the international intercultural, because actually people sometimes refer to my company as GIC, and that I is just like international, intercultural.
Yeah.
So it
Good.
happens. But I'm afraid it's not such a terribly fascinating story. I know that sounds like a letdown. So I was living in London and working at a cultural consultancy, which offered me a job, which I thought, yes, I'm done. I figured it out. And unfortunately, the government had said no to that, which threw me for a loop.
Okay.
And then I was back in the US and facing some pretty intense repatriation.
Oh, yeah.
I call it repatriation culture shock, or reverse culture shock, rather. And I had worked one summer for a German company, but in Bournemouth. So I decided my French was not good enough.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come back to Europe. And so I came to Germany and I went to Essen, actually. I'm currently based in Hamburg in the north. Which I'm biased, but I do think it's one of the most beautiful cities in Germany.
It is. I love Hamburg. It's my favorite city in Germany.
It is. It's so green and so much water, and just the spirit of the city is honestly amazing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. And how long have you been living in Germany now?
Oh, wow. How do I answer that question without revealing my age? It's been at least 13 years.
Okay. Okay. And so I didn't even know that you had this history that you were working in England as well, because then we have something in common, because I used to live and work in England as well. And you said Bournemouth. So Bournemouth in England, or is there also a Bournemouth in the US?
Bournemouth in England. So I lived in Leeds, I lived in London, and I lived in Bournemouth.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I remember one time, I think I spent like a 2-week trip at a host family in Bournemouth. Such a gorgeous city. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So you then decided at some point that you wanted to improve your French. And did you ever get to do that?
I did, but actually, when I considered where I might want to move abroad, I decided to come to Germany, and I didn't know I had literally Gesundheit in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course, Gesundheit was perfect because I grew up hearing that. Actually, bless you sounds more strange to me than Gesundheit.
Yeah.
That's how many Germans we had in the Chicago area. So,
yeah. Okay. Very, very interesting. So you've always been, to me, it sounds like you've always been, exposed to international cultures because you've been abroad. Then you came back and you were always interested in also learning other languages and so on. So this definitely helps with regards to being an intercultural trainer in my eyes. So do you remember what you wanted to become when you were a child? Like what kind of work you wanted to do?
there were two things, and they're very opposite from each other.
Okay.
So I think I mentioned the last time we talked, the very first time I lived abroad, I had never been to England, but I enrolled as a student at the University of Leeds.
Yeah.
And I think part of it came from when I was a little girl. I had a very loving and supportive family. So when someone asked me that, I said Queen of England, because I just thought this is great. Royalty, Queen of England.
Yeah,
Why not?
of
My
course.
mother very gently explained, okay, honey, maybe you want to be president of the US. I wouldn't want that job at all. I wouldn't want that job at all, but
Yeah. Oh,
but
wow.
it's funny because you don't realize growing up in America that this kind of attitude or belief you might have that you can do anything you want,
Yeah.
it can be very cultural.
Yeah. True.
And
That's
so
true.
the first time I was abroad, that's when I realized not everyone has this strong belief that you can do whatever you want or that it's all within your control.
Yeah, that's true. That is really, and that's really interesting also. I remember I never was thinking of becoming the Queen of England, but I always remember my grandma. She's completely obsessed with the royal family, and she always said, "Oh, you need to marry Prince Harry, and then you will be royal at some point."
I took some comfort that,
Yeah.
Prince William
Mm.
married a Kate, just not
Yeah.
me. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I got over
Okay,
it.
so that's, and also that is something what you say, that you grew up in a society that encourages you, and yeah, just simply teaches you this way of living, that you can become whatever you want to be, and just that you have this open space in your imagination, in your head, that you can create this path wherever you want to go. And I always have the feeling that, because I used to live in the US for 1 year, and the students my age, I was there when I was 17, and the students my age were so much more, I mean, there were still different personalities. There are introverts, extroverts, and so on, but with regards to speaking up and speaking out, I always had the feeling that Americans are a lot more outgoing in that sense. And there's just one thing that I always find very interesting, when it comes to marrying a person, and like saying the vows. Like in Germany, people get heart attacks just thinking about that, and just, oh no, what, I have to write something. It's not a common thing. And in whenever I see someone in the US, okay, yeah, let's just have this talk, and I know obviously you're still preparing it, but it comes just so naturally. Sometimes that's what I see. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an American, so I don't know how it really is. But that is something that I find very admiring.
I think there's often this notion of people really love those failure stories or rags to riches,
Oh
that
yeah,
anything can be possible.
yeah, yeah.
But if you compare that to here, like one of
Mhm.
the things you said about taking the vows and how serious it is, I think it shows the mindset of how much people really respect and follow the rules and
Yeah,
take,
yeah, true.
take a promise seriously. And
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
saying that Americans don't. A
yeah,
promise is a promise.
yeah.
It's
That's
something that gives people pause.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So this becoming Queen of England was this one dream of yours, and what was the other?
It was a little more down to earth. I
Okay.
wanted to be a photographer for National Geographic and
Oh
maybe,
yeah,
travel around to other countries, see
yeah,
different wildlife and different cultures and have adventures. And
yeah, 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 yeah.
my brother is the photographer in the family.
Oh, but do you still do photography in your free time? Is that a hobby of yours?
I was a little kid, so I never fully got into it.
Hmm.
I spend my time with a lot of people that are into photography, and I really appreciate the beauty of their photos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same for me. It's I always admire people, because I always have the feeling that I'm not patient enough to find the right spot. I mean, I take nice pictures, but whenever people are taking pictures of me, it's just like, oh yeah, that's a beautiful picture, and then I cannot return the same because my pictures are sometimes a little bit blurry. Okay, so that's very interesting to hear what you wanted to become when you were a child. But what we actually want to talk about today is that you are an intercultural and communication trainer and coach. And what does that actually mean? So it's especially important for everybody that is watching this video. What can they expect when they need your help? Well, like, why would people approach you? How can you help them? What do you offer?
So I offer a lot of different kinds of training or coaching, but usually it is in an international atmosphere.
Okay.
Whether you're moving to another country, you're working in a very diverse team, or if you're stuck, I do also transformative coaching. And sometimes there's overlap between the different kinds of services that I offer. It's not uncommon that you can start, for example, coaching and you realize you have a bigger emphasis on communication or on the intercultural.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think it's a good thing that you can cover different aspects that are somehow interlinked with one another, and it gives a more holistic support to the customer in my eyes. So when you, for example, when I'm abroad and I don't know the language, it can be very difficult for me to adjust to that culture because I don't understand everything that is going on. So, and your customers, your clients are not just US people, right? So where are they coming from?
So they are coming from everywhere, really, sometimes everywhere.
Yeah.
Last week, I was working with a young Brazilian woman who will be moving to Berlin. I worked with an American couple that's moving over to London. This week, I'm working with a Spanish man who will also be moving to Berlin.
Okay. So it's also not just a mixture of people all coming to Germany, but it's a mixture of just internationals going anywhere abroad that is not their home country. And I have the feeling that you can relate very well to these people because you've gone through the same process yourself.
I have several times. And it's not just that. I really travel quite often because anytime you're going into a new environment, you're getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important for us to grow, getting out of our comfort zone. Sometimes I realize when I'm moving somewhere, then it feels like, okay, maybe I'm moving there because that is my comfort zone. But then there are so many other things going on that it's just, for example, this language part or communication. And also communication is not just the language, but it's also the body language. It just includes so much stuff that so whenever I go somewhere abroad, I first have to check what kind of body language signs, for example, I'm not supposed to use. Like some cultures don't like to be tapped on the head, for example, or I think that certain signs with your hands are offensive somewhere. So this is something that also needs to be taken into account. Do you also help repatriates that are going back to their countries?
I do. I was just thinking of the other day of a German employee who came back from Latin America.
Oh.
And it was interesting for him because he had been away for maybe 15 to 17 years. So it was
a long time.
Yeah, but it was most of his adult life in a way.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that because I've been away from the US since I was 19.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so that can be really tough. And it was funny because so many of his colleagues kind of assumed if he was late for something that he was kind of on Latin time. It was so funny because it wasn't really the case.
Okay.
I think he was just kind of dealing with everything in his own time and figuring out his own way of organizing things differently. But he just kind of went with that for the first month. Like, okay, everyone's giving me kind of a free pass. Like, oh, he's just still on, Latin time.
Yeah. Right. Oh yeah, that is something. Yeah. And this could all, I mean, if you have issues with adjusting to your actual culture back home, I mean, you can have a culture shock that you can get when you're coming back. And also, if then your colleagues are making fun of you, it can make it so much more difficult for you to adjust. So I can see that there are a couple of people watching us tonight. So there is, for example, Wilhelmina from Ghana. Just wanted to show this here. Hi, thank you so much that you're here. Everybody else that is watching, just feel free to let us know where you're from, because that is actually a topic that is most interesting to Kate and myself, where you guys are tuning in from. So we know which different cultures are getting together here tonight. But let's get back one step again to what you're offering. So are you normally working with individuals or with groups or with companies? How can people actually reach you if they are individuals or something like that?
So at the moment, the best way to reach me is actually on LinkedIn. I'm in the process of rebuilding my website.
Mm-hmm.
But I do work with all the above as described.
Okay.
Yeah, it does seem very broad, I know, but between
that's normal, I think, and it's good. I mean, it's good for individuals also to know that you're working with individuals as well. This is something that I have encountered a lot when I'm working. Sometimes I offer groups, but it has to be a specific group setting so that it works. And sometimes they don't match up. So individual coaching is just way more appropriate. But then there are companies who just come across our profiles, our coaching profiles, and then obviously they need help as well. So it's good for everybody to know that you're offering all of these. And so basically people can just send you a message and then and tell you what their issue is, and then you work with them. So for normally, do you have like a time frame how long you work with them, or is that very individually?
It's very individual. So depending on what is the scope of the project or with working with someone, for example, I think probably the main interest for the summit that you and I are both part of is actually intercultural training for relocation.
Yeah.
And that's an example of one kind of intercultural training I do that's more cultural specific.
Yeah.
I also do cultural general trainings, often for universities or companies, like building intercultural competence or working in multicultural teams or things like that. So that could be companies or groups. But to give you another example, I do a lot of communication training. I just ran one of my workshops, which is my own concept for turning conflict into positive outcome for the Hamburg School of Business Administration. So,
ooh, that is really interesting. Cool. I love it.
Yeah. So it's probably one of the best parts of my job is that it's always different. Every kind of training or coaching, it is never, ever the same.
Yeah. And is that also what you love the most about your job?
That and the contact that I have with people, because every time I work with someone or a group of people, I'm learning myself and I'm developing and I'm growing. And that is just, it's kind of an amazing process.
Oh, that is actually something that I just realized now from talking to you, that of course, it's not just the coachee that is learning, but I'm in the process of learning when I'm working with my coachees as well. I mean, I know that I always had the feeling it's a win-win situation, because I'm so happy when they are like getting to their next win or just achieve something that they have set as a goal for themselves. But I've never really named it as such that I learn, but it's totally true. I learn from each individual that I'm working with as well. That's a good point. I have to take a note on that. That's really good. Yeah. And what would you say, what's the most difficult about your job? Is there a part that is difficult?
I don't know if I would say it's difficult, because it's interesting that you describe it as a holistic approach. But I think sometimes if I'm working with someone and I need to say, actually, this is developed into a different service, or it's going in that direction, that can be a little bit tough.
Okay.
I work also as a business English coach for people that need to speak English at a high level in certain kinds of functions.
Yeah.
And one of my clients right now has been very open about saying, I love working with you because everything comes in, because we do transformative coaching to some degree as well. We talk about strategy. So there's a lot of things that kind of come into our sessions.
Yeah. And but I also I can see that this can be a difficult part, but it's also sometimes, I mean, the coachee is just happy to have you on their side so that you can guide them through the process. And I think this flexibility is also nice because they have gotten used to you and how you work. And then it should be easier for them to just transition into that other phase. I sometimes have the feeling that when I'm working with my coachees that they're just sometimes not ready to take the next step. And this is sometimes also difficult that they are not ready to work on this part of the coaching, just simply put as that. But at some point they will. I mean, I'm not forcing anybody, but I will always give them time to think about that. But I mean, change can be difficult for all sides all the time. So what would you say is difficult for your clients? So when they come to you and approach you, so for example, they send you their first message, what do they normally say? Oh, I have an issue with this and that. Do they already know what is going on? Or do you have to help them?
I think that can really vary. I think the toughest thing is sometimes knowing what you want to work on or what you need to improve on.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you ever experienced that, but you kind of fill in certain gaps because you're experienced and you know what people might need, but you also want to know from them what is important and to kind of customize that.
Yeah.
But I'm also well aware that if you walk in and you say, okay, what do you want to accomplish? Most people look at you surprised, like, I was hoping you'd tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes I also have people that say, well, I've never done a coaching before, so I don't really know what to expect. And obviously on our social media channels or on the website, we describe what we're doing and they have some sort of feeling. But when it gets to that, okay, let's talk about what you want to accomplish. How would you, for example, describe that this coaching was successful in your eyes? Then it's sometimes difficult for them. Yeah, I've seen that as well. But it's they, as long as they are open to finding it out, everything's fine. But I think that people wouldn't work with us if they weren't open. So my next question is about your business. So you call your business Griffin International Consulting, and you also told me that there is intercultural training. You said that there is communication training and business English for people, and this Griffin International Consulting, how would you describe how you help the people? So with the offer that you have, I don't know whether I've managed to say it now correctly, what I wanted to bring across. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I think it depends on, are they looking for building their intercultural competence? Are they moving to a new country? Are they getting into a new leadership role? Are they entering a different environment where maybe they're presenting to the board of management or the supervisory board? It really can vary depending on the kind of service, but in general, I'd say most of it relates to just moving around in an international world in some way or the other. One of my favorite communication trainings is actually communicating across language barriers, because you have the elements of the cultural, but also people tend to forget it's not just people speaking English, it's other people who are speaking other languages that is not their native language.
Yeah, that's true. That is also something that is sometimes very difficult for me to just get these nuance, whether it's just normal how they say it and whether that is typical for that person, how they say it, or whether it's offensive. So sometimes I have the feeling that when I'm communicating in English, it's a lot more polite. The way how I phrase emails, for example, is a lot more polite compared to the German directness, how we do things. But I also sometimes have the feeling that due to the fact that English is just a language that I've learned, so foreign language and not my native language, I sometimes miss out on certain nuances, and that is something where I can feel offended quite easily, actually, because it's just like, oh, was that now offensive? I feel offended somehow, but I don't know. Maybe this person is just talking like that.
You know, you hit on a couple good points there. One about nuance, but also one about expectations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So I can give you an example of a story that has both of those.
Oh, cool.
A friend of mine works for a marketing company, and he had a new British boss.
Okay.
And his boss had come to him and was asking about, I think it was a product forecast or something like that. And he was quite happy because he had finished it a few weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
So at the end, the boss had said for feedback, okay, you might want to consider changing this or that. And it's okay. There's still some time to go, or you have a long way to go. Sorry.
Yeah.
And when I think of nuances, I think of you have a long way to go. If you don't know the phrase, can be really misunderstood.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. For me now, I would think, oh, I'm at the very start and I'm probably not qualified enough to do the job.
I don't think it's what he thought necessarily, but my friend was under the impression, okay, two things. He never heard that expression, you have a long way to go. He took it literally. He's like, yes, I finished it a couple weeks ahead. There is a long way to go.
Yeah.
And then his expectation as a German was also, if my boss wants me to change something, they would tell me to change it, not you might want to consider.
Yeah.
So very kind of typical indirect politeness wasn't coming across. And they had a miscommunication that wasn't clear until a couple days later. The boss came over, asked my friend, did you make those changes? And he was like, what changes?
Yeah.
And then they talked a little bit about it, but it's just something that either side thought about. And that's usually what's at the core of most, cultural or communication misunderstandings, is these expectations that aren't shared or clarified from the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good story because it just has everything in there, especially when you have phrases like that, where it's very clear for a native speaker, but it's for people that have just learned it as a second language, it can be very difficult to really understand these idioms. Yeah. Really interesting. Okay. So do you personally have come across a misunderstanding, like a cultural misunderstanding, since you've been in Germany?
Have I personally come across?
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on how you would define misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. So for something where you were in a situation and you were shocked, let's put it that way.
Yes, I think there have been more than one or two things, but I think also I came over here as an intercultural trainer.
Yeah.
So I did have kind of a toolkit that most people don't have.
Yeah.
So in terms of miscommunications, a lot of it, I didn't have that. It was more smaller things that surprised me. I still smile when I cross at a certain U-Bahn station where there's a red light and entire groups of people will not cross that red light. There are no cars, there's no children, there's no police, and they still won't cross on that red light. And it just makes
That's so true. And I always feel so exposed when I'm abroad and do that, just stand there and everybody knows, oh, it's probably a German person. It's just really weird. That's really strange. Yeah, okay. So, and do you have any advice that you would give someone that is just thinking about moving to Germany or just moving abroad maybe?
I think if you are considering moving somewhere, if you have the opportunity to visit or to connect with people in that country,
Yeah.
and even if you aren't able to visit, we have so many great resources and organizations that honestly I didn't have the first time I lived abroad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
example, Internations or
Yeah.
Meetup, or
Yeah.
it's very easy to reach out to people.
Yeah.
There's also so many groups, whether on basically every social media channel, that you can connect with expats. And I think that's probably where a lot of people who will come to the summit probably are coming from, are these various groups.
Yeah, that's true. And I can totally support this fact that those groups haven't been around. Yeah, and it's just developing and getting more and more. So it's very nice that you have this opportunity to connect with people from the country wherever you want to go already beforehand. You can, and also great advice from your side that you can visit it beforehand. Sometimes I have people that tell me, "Oh, I want to come to Germany," and they have never been here. And I'm always a little bit afraid because I think, "Oh, this could be a shock for you because your culture is completely different from what is going on here." And but then most of the time it works out just fine. But that is also a reason why people should contact people like you. So people that are moving abroad, it's always a good idea to have an intercultural trainer, a communication trainer and coach on your side, so that when you come across some cultural misunderstandings or just any like some sort of transformation that you have to do and you have the feeling that you're lost, or also have a cultural shock, you don't have to go through this stuff on your own. There are people out there like Kate who can help you, and that's what Kate is here for. And she has mentioned the summit, so if you want to hear more about her and her expertise and what kind of experience she has, feel free to join us on the 29th of September from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the afternoon. We are, so German time, we are offering an online event that is called the Welcome to Germany Summit. But now, Kate, if people want to work with you directly, now that they've seen the video, this interview with us, I have linked your website and your LinkedIn profile in the descriptions of this video. But how would you prefer them to contact you? Is it via email? Is it via message? What do you prefer? How can people reach you?
A lot of people that want to work with me and that I'm currently working with just reach out over LinkedIn. So I would say until my beautiful future website is done being rebuilt, LinkedIn would be the best way to go.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I thought. So feel free, guys, to catch up and connect with Kate. You will find her link to her profile in the description of the video. And I can just say, Kate, it was a real pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for sharing glimpses of your knowledge. And I can't wait to see you at the summit and learn even more about what you are offering this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Lisa. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.